So in today's video, I'm going to talk you through creating a picture like this. So yeah, I'm just going to talk you through how to draw it, what I'm doing, and as I go along, I'll be sharing any tips or tricks or thoughts along the way. Sometimes I'll just have a little random natter. So if you want to draw along with me, grab your sketchbook, or if you just like to sit back and watch for inspiration or relaxation, I hope you enjoy. This is a really simple pattern to do. Doesn't require lots and lots of experience, and you don't have to do this drawing exactly as I'm doing it, but if you follow the concepts you'll come up with something similar. So for this drawing I'm using a sheet of 300 GSM watercolour paper. You can of course use any sized paper that you like. So I'm going to use a black marker pen, a black gel pen, and my trusty sellotape inner for drawing the circles. I find it easier to draw around the inside of something than the outside, but you can use anything that you like to draw around. Right, so let's get started. What I'm going to do is draw 4 circles along the top of the page. Now I'm leaving about an inch border for the top circle, and then I'm just going to interlock them slightly. The second circle I'm moving down to a southeast direction, and then the third circle I'm moving up to a northeast direction, and the fourth circle I'm just slightly offsetting it northeast as well. I'm going to draw 4 more circles along the bottom of the page as well. First circle slightly southwest, and the second circle I'm going to draw slightly offset so that we've got that lovely little interlocking pattern. The third circle I'm going to move down, and the fourth circle I'm aiming to interlock the top row and the bottom row. So what we want to do is draw 3 lines across the page that are going to intersect the top 4 circles. I find it helpful to know that I've got a free run across the page, and I'm thinking a little bit about how that line is going to curve. So for the next 2 lines that we're going to draw across the page, we want to kind of follow the same path, but we don't need to do it exactly. We want to create a little bit of variation. So we want them to kind of stay parallel, but they're not really parallel because they're not the same distance apart, but kind of like that. So we're going to do the same for the bottom 4 circles. We're going to draw 3 lines to try and intersect all of the circles, and occasionally you'll get a stop with your pen like I did. This last line was a bit tougher to draw in because I hadn't left myself enough space. So for the next part we're going to outline all of the circles. Forget about the horizontal lines that we've just drawn, we're just going to roughly draw around the circles. Now it doesn't matter if you go in too far, go out too far, because the actual final result won't look as bad as you think. So this doesn't look like a particularly great picture, but you'll be amazed just how it transforms when you add the extra detail and the colour. So what I'm doing now is I'm filling in all of the corners. Everywhere that the lines cross, I'm putting in a Neurographic style corner. So I'm just curving off all of the corners. So for those of you that don't know how to do this, it's very simple. You just start on one line and curve it round to join up with the next line, and then fill in any empty space that you've got. You can make these lines deep, you can make them shallow, but this is one of the most relaxing parts of doodling, I find anyway. I mean, naturally, that's not true. There are several really relaxing parts to doodling, but this is one of the most relaxing parts. Putting the circles and the lines down on the page, it's easy to think, oh, I've messed this up. At the top there, you can see my lines are touching. That wasn't what I'd intended to do. But with this style of drawing, when you make a mistake, you can pretty much turn it around most times. There's been a few instances where I haven't, but Also, I would just mention now that as I was drawing around the inside of my sellotape inner, you can see there's a few places where there's a bit of a dodgy join. That's fine as well. You actually won't really notice those by the time we've put all the fillers in, but if you feel like they're too noticeable, you can just smooth them off with a gel pen or a fine liner. So you want to carry on filling in all of the neurographic corners. And if you're drawing along with me now, then you might want to pause the video and start it once you've finished curving in all of your corners. So once all of your corners have been curved off, we can take our first colour. Now my first colour is a diluted Daler-Rowney acrylic ink. I dilute them into a Winsor & Newton pot, so please don't get confused. That is a Winsor & Newton pot. I do save my ink pots specifically for the purpose of diluting my inks down when I need to. So I'm filling in the top section here with the ink. And then I'm skipping a section, and then I'm going to fill in the next section with the ink. So I'm focusing on the evil lines across the page. Now with the diluted ink, it acts very much like watercolour, and it's very easy to use a fine brush just to get right up to the edges. So focusing just on that top line, I'm going to ink in every other section along those lines. I do find that the drawing ink gives a much more consistent colour. However, if you don't spread it out enough, you will get splotches of colour. But it does give a very watercolour effect, with the advantage that the inks have a slight sheen on them, whereas watercolour paint can be quite dull when it dries. So on this second row, I'm going to go to the second section and colour it in with the drawing ink. And what you want to do is follow the same sequence, and you want to ink in or colour in every alternate section along the bottom row. So I've had to go back to the first square because I've added way too much ink on the first square. But the great thing is when your brush is a bit dry, you can go back and soak up the ink from a previous section. So on the bottom row, we're going to follow exactly the same process. We're going to ink in or colour in every alternate section. You can use watercolour paint, you can use acrylic paint, you can use coloured pencil if you want, you can do shading, you could, well, yeah, whatever you've got to hand. You don't have to go out and buy drawing ink to do this picture. In previous drawings, I've used watercolour paint and I've loved that effect very much. But I've fallen in love with these Daler Rowney inks, so that's why I'm using them today. So I'm going to fast forward just to the end of this row. So if you're drawing along or painting along with me, pause the video and we'll start again in a second. Right, so the next stage is to colour in the bottom row, the bottom area where we circled around the circles. You can see the pattern that's emerging. We're basically colouring in every other section. So if, like me, your lines are a little bit wibbly wobbly, it doesn't matter. It's actually what I found most incredible about doing this neurographic Zentangle style art is that mistakes and wibbles and wobbles actually don't matter. They really just make the picture. So I'm going to turn my painting around at this stage just to make it easier so I don't have to work over myself, and I'm just going to let the ink dry. The other beauty of using drawing ink is that it dries so much quicker than watercolour paint. Even diluted, it dries very quickly. So I've turned the picture around and I'm filling in the outside edge because I'm following the pattern of every other section is going to be painted with this lovely pale green. It's almost viridian, isn't it? I love this kind of bluey green colour. I suppose it depends on the contrast you've got on your device that you're watching, but in real life this is a very pale blue, but on the screen it does look a little bit greeny. So I'm still using the blue ink, and what I want to do is ink in all of the other sections within the circles. That sounds a little bit complicated. If you see what I'm doing here is I'm checking. I don't want to ink in any section that isn't intersected. So this is the most complicated part to explain here, but you will see what I'm doing. Any section that has been intersected by another circle or that has been intersected by the horizontal lines I want to ink in, but the other sections I don't want to ink in. So now I'm going to add some of the diluted black ink. This is Winsor & Newton regular traditional drawing ink. What I did to dilute it was practically an empty bottle, so I just filled it up with water from the tap and gave it a shake. So you'll see it's a little bit grainy in places, but it dries quite a lot lighter. So what I'm doing is I'm just working my way along the lines and inking in with the grey ink. As I'm doing this, you'll see the pattern emerging a little bit more. If I feel that the ink is a little bit darker in places, if you've got too much water, the ink goes a little bit darker. I will, again, as with the blue ink or the green ink, it looks blue on real life, honestly it does. I'll just pop my dry paintbrush back onto the paper. So you can see I'm following the lines. So it sounds a little bit complicated, but if you follow the process slowly, you will get it right. So what we're doing is we're just following those lines and inking in the lines with the grey. All of the sections that are not intersected will be colouring in with a pattern, with the exception of a couple of the intersections on the bottom. You really will see this pattern emerge and you'll find it easier to follow. But like I said, if you're doing this yourself and you've made a mistake or you can't follow it properly, don't panic. Work it into the design. Honestly, the number of times that I have made a mistake and just worked it into the design and created a really lovely picture, oh yeah, it just amazes me every time. So just work with it, go with it, but try to follow the process. So I've actually missed a bit here. Sometimes when I'm working, I get so engrossed in what I'm doing, or I get a little bit distracted, especially when I get very tired. And yeah, but just take the time to step back from the drawing from time to time and just assess where you're at. So now I'm inking in the edges, the circular, let's call it the London orbital. No, let's call it the M25. Just around the edge. Anyone that's not in the UK won't get that. There's a massive ring road that goes all the way around London and it's called the M25. So that's why I said that. Anyone in the UK will get it. But yeah, we're inking in the London orbital and in the grey. And then on the bottom row, we will just continue with the pattern. When I'm painting or I'm drawing, I very much like to either have one of my favourite chatty YouTube channels playing, or I'll put something on Netflix. I went through a stage of watching a lot of old drama series on Netflix, but I think I've worn all those out now. But the other thing that I like to do is put on Classic FM, and you'll have noticed on some of my full process videos that I play a lot of kind of gentle, relaxing, almost classical music. It's because I really enjoy just having that playing. I like lots of other music as well, but when I'm drawing, I really find that, listening to something like Classic FM is just really therapeutic. And the other thing that I really like to do is to listen to audiobooks. And then when we get round to the end of the lines, we'll ink in the grey, that section on the right of the London orbital. Right, so we've finished with the grey lines on the London orbital. So now what we want to do is just ink in with the grey all of the sections that have been intersected by another circle. Any section that hasn't been intersected should not have a colour in it. I think that's probably starting to emerge now. It's probably going to start making sense to you now. So some of this ink looks a little bit patchy in places, and even on the final result, some of it will dry a little bit patchy. But I like that effect. I don't know why, I like that effect. Sometimes I need to see a really bold, bright colour, and I want it to be a solid, bold, bright colour. But sometimes I really just like the kind of wishy-washy effect. Now these colours will dry a lot lighter than this as well. I'm sorry that the lighting's gone a bit bright and dull. It's such a cloudy day, and I struggle so much with cloudy days and filming. Even if I pull the blinds shut, it still comes through. I need some of those like blackout curtains and just some better lights. I have got spotlights that I use when I'm drawing, but yeah. Right, the inking's done. All of the ink is done. So I'm turning my work now because I'm going to draw in these scratchy cobnut lines. So when I'm drawing these, I want to make sure that my wrist will freely move between the sections that I'm going to draw. And I'm just going to check that before I start drawing, because once I've started the section, I don't want to stop. So I'm going to start in the top corner and bring my pen down to the bottom corner, and creating a slight arch, I'm bringing it, or trying to bring it back to the same point every curve. So we're gradually getting a higher arch. Now, sometimes that's not always possible, so I'll just take it as far as I can. So I'll show you again. I'll start on the lowest point here and I'm coming to this point. I'm bringing my line over and then lifting it slightly, bringing my pen back to exactly the same point as I started. Until I get to here, and it gets a bit of a struggle, and so I'm just filling in the gaps freehand. Start at the furthest point, bring it down to the next point and back. Round, over, around. And here I'm just going to go back and fill in just small sections just to complete the pattern. This one's slightly smaller, so it's only going to take 2 lines, maybe 3, yeah. So what we're going to do is fill in all of the circle sections that are white with this pattern. Now we don't want to make the mistake of filling any sections that aren't actually circles. But we're going to take the 2 lowest points every time, start in one corner, a very slight arch to the next one. If you go too high, you can go back and go under. It doesn't matter if your lines cross, doesn't matter if they overlap. We're doing these lines without taking the pen off the page. The only time I'll take the pen off the page is when I need to fill in these tiny little extra bits. So I'm not going to fast forward this bit because this bit might take a little bit of just getting used to. Need to go one way, the other way, one way, the other way, trying to get to exactly the same point. But not all of the shapes are perfect, so we end up with this kind of weird thing where we've got to fill in the gaps. And what I do is I just kind of zigzag it with arches. If I haven't stressed it enough in any of my other videos, you can't actually go wrong with this kind of drawing, because even if you make a mistake, somehow it just seems to look all right. So this one, you can see my arch has completed, but I've got all this white space. So I'm just zigzagging my pen without taking my pen off the page. So we've got one section here that I've missed. And there's 4 sections here left to complete. So I hope I've given you enough information that you'll be able to recreate this drawing yourself. I hope I haven't rambled on for too long about insignificant things. And I'm really sorry for the lighting as well. Oh, this one's quite an important one because we've got which dips do we take? Do we take this one? Do we take this one? Or do we take the furthest one? It's up to you, completely up to you. I chose the two that were closest to each other because I felt like at the time it would be the best option. Just filling in the empty spaces. Oh, this one's slightly different because you've got a downward curve and we want to try and make it an upward curve. The more you do this pattern, the easier it'll get. And I'd very much recommend that you take the time to try this pattern in various different ways, maybe with bigger circles or smaller circles. As you can see, every time you do this pattern, you can align your circles differently, but the principles remain the same. Do let me know how you get on in the comments below, and if you want to, you can tag me with your photographs on Instagram, and I hope to catch up with you soon. I'll be publishing a new Let's Doodle every 2 weeks for the foreseeable future. Thank you very much for watching. I hope that this video has been useful. If it has, do give me a thumbs up. Your support is very, very much appreciated.